And greetings, welcome to the Evidence and Reasons for the Christian Faith video channel. Happy Thanksgiving and happy Black Friday. It's just, I don't know how that name for Black Friday came about. One of the reasons I explore evidence and reasons for the Christian faith is my experience in church has been a mixed bag. I think there were some sincere and good people, but a lot of scam artists. Now looking in retrospect, and no wonder that I never felt my questions were answered or my faith built. Some of the business model is to try to get the most gullible and manipulatable people, the sheeples, so to speak, the sheep, into the church. They don't exactly welcome a skeptical mind. They prefer blind obedience, and I know that may seem harsh, but it says in the Bible the gospel is spread by people with good motives and also bad. Actually, since I'm mentioning it, why don't I look up that verse? Let's look at, there is a verse about it. Let me see if I could find it. Oh, thank you, David Cronin. God bless you. And let me say greetings to you. I'm using Streamlabs, which prevents me from doing this the way I do it in StreamYard, where I could highlight comments. God bless you too. So, God bless you too. And let's look at first Philippians. Maybe it's Philippians 1:17. See if that's the correct. Yes. The former preach Christ out of selfish ambition, not sincerely, supposing that they can stir up trouble. And this is a very interesting verse. So why don't I show it? (1:17). So there are people that let me show this here. It says here, for some indeed preach Christ from envy and rivalry, but others from goodwill. The latter do it out of love, knowing that I'm here for the defense of the gospel. The former proclaim Christ out of selfish ambition, not sincerely, but thinking to afflict me in my imprisonment. What then? Only that in every way, whether in pretense or in truth, Christ is proclaimed, in that I rejoice. The point being is there are people that can preach the gospel for not pure motives, and some will even find a way to make money preying upon religious folk. And now, kind of sadly, I'm looking in retrospect, and I could see now why my skeptical mind was not welcome in the church. In many churches, it is against their business model, and they just don't want to waste time trying to answer difficult questions. They'd rather get sheep that are easy to persuade. And I kind of resented that, and if that's the sort of people that they keep catering to, you could see how the culture will just eventually break down because it doesn't have a good foundation on facts. I emphasize on this channel fact-inspired faith. Fact-inspired faith. Now, we don't have as many facts as we would like. If God would appear like he did in the Old Testament, like a pillar of cloud and a pillar of fire at night, I think it'd be, a lot more people would be persuaded he exists. He's chosen to be subtle And that's just the way it plays out. That's by design. I think he does that to filter out those who really want his kingdom versus those that don't want anything to do with it. He makes it extremely easy for people to turn away from the Christian faith if they wish to close their eyes. I mean, extremely easy. So that being said, part of the reason that I think the churches have declined, and also the culture, is that we've had some very unsavory characters in the church perpetuating culture that is serving their pockets as far as money, and they really weren't focused on really caring and shepherding flocks. And so I have some pretty disturbing things I need to read, and it's just like, guys, be careful. I prefer the spread of Christianity the way it's growing in Iran, not with a lot of money and under persecution. People's motives are much more sincere in an environment like that. It's clear it's much more sincere. And, some of the stuff that I see in church, if you're disgusted with it, I don't know what your circumstances may be, but there are plenty of reasons to be disgusted with lots of churches in the USA. I'm sorry to say that. And if you think I'm being particularly harsh, let me just read some articles. And, because I care for Christ's church, it bothers me that these criminals float around, and I'll only be reading about the criminals that are caught. I'm sorry to say there are probably plenty that are still out there. And it's very sad. They're preying upon people. They add, long term, they're damaging to the Christian faith. And it's now becoming understandable what has happened in Christian culture here in the USA. Now in Iran, there's an outpouring of God's Spirit, miracles and answered prayer, and persecution. That has a way of instilling Christian faith in people. When they realize that the religion that's being forced down their throat, Islam, isn't meeting their deepest needs. It doesn't seem based in fact. And then, when miracles and answered prayer are descending upon a community, people begin to notice. Here in the United States, miracles may be there, but it is kind of drowned out by the sheer power of the technology. And sometimes we don't see God's provision, and I understand that. But then also there's a lot of preaching that is not from sincere motives. I say that because I've been traumatized in the church, and it's a miracle that I'm still in the faith. If I had not been in the study of the defense of the faith, what they call apologetics, I prefer defense of the faith, and also study of evidence and reasons, I think I'd be an unbeliever. I think all of this was a sham to build people of money. I've had prayers that I believe were answered, and I think I have seen miracles, and the study of the creation evolution controversy has persuaded me life is a miracle of God. So, as I read this, I may not be able to spend a lot of time on the side chat, so thank you all for your questions. And Gangster Ghost asks, did Jesus believe Jesus did all his prophet back in his time? I'm sorry, I don't understand the question. Andy Cazador, greetings. I'm grieved about the wolves in the church. A biblical ecclesiology protects the flock from them. People, find a biblically run church. All right, guys, I'm just going to go right into it. This is ugly. And I'm sure you all have more horror stories. But this is on my heart that I feel I should cover this. This began as I was reading this article, Spending God's Money. And in this, it talked about something that kind of made my eyes pop out. The Baptist Foundation of Arizona cost thousands of investors their life savings to the tune of $570 million. It was called the largest affinity fraud in history. I mean, I shouldn't laugh, but sometimes it's so bad you can't help but laugh. It just seems so absurd you can't help but laugh, but $570 million. So if you think I'm being too harsh by saying that the sheep are preyed upon, think about $570 million. This is just terrible. So, what can I say to those sort of numbers? So, the article, if you want to look at it, it's in the video description. This is an introduction. It's Spending God's Money, December 11, 2008. So this is even 14 years ago, and I think there are even more financial scandals and also, sadly, sex abuse scandals. The cover-ups of financial wrongdoing and also cover-ups of clergy sex abuse. Clergy sex abuse. What's really bad about this is the church does not want to talk about this. It's like, well, we're going to scare people off if we hear what kind of crooks are in the neighborhood. And I'm like, well, maybe if you started telling the truth more, the church wouldn't have such a bad reputation and we could clean out the bad a little faster. Yes, and David Cronin says, blood of the martyrs is the seed of the church. Iran. Iran's church grows through tribulation and not through prosperity. Someone says, blame Darth Ratzinger. Okay, so I'm going to go just to the Wikipedia article on the Baptist Foundation. And I kind of do these streams and just read from articles because that's the way I learn. It's one way I can make a stream and we can have kind of like a get-together, and then also I can learn and everyone hopefully can learn something. The Baptist Foundation of Arizona was a Southern Baptist charity which executed an affinity fraud on unwitting worshipers in the Southern Baptist community of Arizona. So what's an affinity fraud? Affinity fraud is a form of investment fraud in which the fraudster preys upon members of identifiable groups such as religious or ethnic communities, language minorities, the elderly, or professional groups. The fraudsters who promote affinity scams frequently are or successfully pretend to be members of the group. I think that's what it's going to say, members of the group. Let me just see. Members of the group. They often enlist respected community or religious leaders from within the group to spread the word about the scheme, by convincing those people that a fraudulent investment is legitimate and worthwhile. Many times these leaders become unwitting victims of the fraudsters' ruse. Whoa. Okay. Okay. Which executed an affinity fraud on unwitting worshipers in the Southern Baptist community in Arizona, leading to the largest collapse of a religious financial institution in U.S. history. The BFA was associated with the Arizona Southern Baptist Convention, which was affiliated with the national organization. When the BFA filed for bankruptcy in 1999, it had $530 million in liabilities as compared to a reported $70 million in assets. Ouch. The Arizona Southern Baptist Convention was founded in 1928. In 1948, the Baptist Foundation of Arizona was founded in 1948 and initially sought to provide a financial revenue for participants while supporting Baptist-motivated causes. In 1962, Pastor Glenn Crotts became the organization's first president. Under his leadership, the organization held strict moral values, including its officers being forbidden to gamble or drink alcohol. 20 years later, Glenn Crotts' son, William Pierre Bill Crotts, became the organization's second president. The BFA consistently sold the concept that its main objective was to help its investors serve the work of the Arizona Southern Baptist Convention while also providing them with favorable returns as stated in a BFA investor brochure. We are a ministry dedicated to serving the Lord and furthering Southern Baptist and other Christian causes. We reinvest your money, and the profit we earn goes to further such ministries as Christian education, care for children and senior adults, missions, and new church starts. Your investment actually touches the lives of countless numbers while you earn a very attractive interest rate. 1999 bankruptcy. The Baptist Foundation of Arizona declared bankruptcy in 1999, citing $530 million in liabilities against $70 million in assets. The collapse of the BFA did not occur in a vacuum. In 1992, records indicated that the company had lost $3.2 million due to questionable transactions. The Reverend Ed Shaw suggested that the BFA explain the situation completely to investors, ask their forgiveness, let them know their gift of principal would help if they choose to give some or all of it. Instead, the BFA decided to hide its debt and begin a series of dubious activities. Under Bill Crotts, the organization diverted over $140 million to two former and one active, as of 1998, director. The organization did this through the use of over 63 different public and private organizations, all directly affiliated with the BFA. Wow. Through the use of over 63 different public and private organizations, all directly affiliated with the BFA. Each of these related companies had Bill Crotts and the BFA's chief attorney, Tom Grabinski, on their board. Grabinski signed documents as an officer for both the BFA and a subsidiary. When asked if a conflict of interest existed, the BFA indicated that both parties had waived any conflicts of interest. Since he was working for both companies, Grabinski was able to authorize questionable transactions. Wow. For example, on one day, Grabinski attested to the value of a piece of property twice. The first time he attested to the value, he indicated that the property was worth $3.3 million. The second time, on the same day, he declared the same piece of property was valued at $960,000. Fraudulent activities. The BFA carried out a number of illegal activities in perpetrating affinity fraud against Southern Baptist worshipers in Arizona. Good bank, bad bank. The BFA had issued millions of dollars in money-losing loans. In order to remove those loans from its books, the BFA secretly funneled money to a subsidiary. The subsidiary then used that money to purchase the loans from the parent company. Well, let me see how this is done. The BFA issued millions of dollars in money-losing loans. Okay, in order to remove the loans from its books, the BFA secretly funneled money to a subsidiary. The subsidiary then used the money to purchase the loans from the parent company. In a good bank, bad bank scheme, the two companies manipulate transactions to favor the public institution while using the bad bank to hide deficiencies. Whoa. Maximum value performance note. The BFA sold certificates of deposit that were non-refundable during the life of the CD. MVPNs were marketed with the notion that they received a higher than average yield and that part of the investment return was used for God's mission. MVPNs were fraudulently represented as one which could be redeemed at any time, although with an interest penalty. MVPNs. What's an MVPN? Is that defined somewhere here? Oh, maximum value performance note. A maximum value performance note. Elder law attorney Lees wondered why BFA would sell the elderly an investment that would tie up more than 2/3 of their non-residential assets in an investment that would be unavailable for 5 years. Ponzi schemes. Mechanisms whereby the early investors make a profit by receiving the contributions of later investors. The BFA became dependent upon future investors to pay older investors in loan interest. Land flipping. A land flipping scheme is one where a person or company inflates the value of a piece of property to make more money. For example, the Phoenix News-Times reported a case where an individual wanted to sell $1.9 million piece of asbestos contaminated property to the BFA for $1 as a tax write-off. The BFA was not interested in making this purchase. Instead, they referred the individual to former BFA director Jalma Hunsinger, who then purchased the property for $1. Hunsinger subsequently used the property as collateral to obtain a $6.8 million loan from the BFA. Essentially, the transaction that favored a former director, the BFA accepted a piece of property which the BFA itself declined to purchase as collateral for a loan that amounted to $4.9 million, more than the property's appraisal value. Ooh. The BFA sold property to the elderly that was marketed as a retirement community with a nursing home. The person did not actually purchase the property, but purchased the right to occupy said property. Thus, when people tried to sell it, they could not because they did not own anything. Oh, this is terrible. The Arizona Attorney General's Office and the Arizona Corporation Commission conducted the criminal investigation that resulted in the conviction of 8 defendants. Some justice has been served. 8 defendants. At the time of its failure in 1999, it was the largest affinity fraud that had ever occurred in the United States, with a total loss estimated at $550 million, equivalent to $895 million in 2021. Indictments were handed down in April 2001. By July 2006, when the BFA president and CEO William Krotz and BFA's chief legal counsel Thomas Grabinski were found guilty at trial on multiple counts of fraud, 5 other defendants had already pleaded guilty. The trial of Grabinski and Krotz was the longest criminal jury trial in the history of the state of Arizona. Krotz was sentenced to 8 years in prison, while Grabinski was sentenced to 6 years. The 2 convicted criminals were required to pay $159 million, equivalent to $214 million in 2021, each in restitution. In 2002, Grabinski sued BFA's insurance carrier, National Union Fire Insurance Company of Pittsburgh, National Union, for coverage of his legal fees per the directors' and officers' liability coverage purchased from National Union plus damages. In February 2004, the jury in the Arizona Superior Court civil trial found in favor of Grabinski, with the court ordering National Union to pay Grabinski $2.5 million, equivalent to $3.6 million in 2021. National Union appealed that ruling, leading to Gillespie suing them in July 2004 for damages due to abuse of process. The abuse of process claim was denied by the United States District Court for the District of Arizona in a September 2005 ruling on National Union's motion to dismiss. Independent of the abuse of process ruling, the Arizona Superior Court ruling was upheld by the Arizona Court of Appeals in March 2005, at which point National Union paid the $2.5 million to Gillespie. In early 2007, several former members of the BFA's executive management team were sentenced for fraudulent activities associated with the BFA. Donald A. Deerdorf, Senior Vice President and Controller, was sentenced to 4 years in prison and a fine of $150 million, equivalent to $196 million in 2021. Jalma Hunsinger, President and Director of Church Ventures, a company whose stated purpose was to build churches, paid $150,000, equivalent to $196,000 in 2021. In 2002, a judge in the civil court case of the BFA Liquidation Trust versus Arthur Andersen, the Big Five accounting firm that also failed to properly audit Enron officially approved a settlement that would pay former BFA investors $217 million, equivalent to $327 million in 2021, for Andersen's failure to identify fraudulent activities at the BFA. Whoa. A judge in the civil court case, the BFA Liquidation Trust. So these are the people that were scammed. And they fought Arthur Andersen. And the court signed off on the settlement. The court sign off on the settlement meant that the BFA Liquidation Trust had standing should Andersen, which was at the time being charged for issues surrounding Enron, be unable to make that payment. Christianity Today reported that the timing of this court-approved settlement avoided the worst-case scenario for Baptist Foundation investors of Andersen being convicted in its then ongoing criminal case regarding its audits of Enron, then quickly filing for bankruptcy court protection from any civil lawsuits not yet settled in court. At the time, the settlement was the second largest settlement in the nation's history for a Big Five accounting firm that was not related to the savings and loan collapse of 1986-1995. Wow. All right. You know, this will sound harsh, but I think, this is a very technical thing. But when we're teaching about verses in the Bible that talk about the Pharisees, they're full of hypocrisy and extortion. They're very good actors. I think this should be taught in Sunday school. What scam artists there are, what wolves there are that have inhabited churches. We like to make the churches seem like they are safe havens. And, the New Testament doesn't necessarily teach that. You look at Acts chapter 20, God warned Paul about a church that Paul helped to found, the Ephesian church. And Paul said, God, I have prayed for you night and day, knowing that after my departure, savage wolves will come upon you, not sparing the flock. And you read all the places where it's been prophesied. We are to come together to worship in the church. But guys, just be on your guard. Be on your guard. I'm really sorry to have to tell you that. It'll set your eyes upon Jesus, not not on flawed human beings. You read the Old Testament and the New Testament, it's very sobering how frequently human beings will let you down. But we come together to pray with one another and to worship the Lord, and that's what really counts. How have I dealt with this problem? Well, you start to know, you get a feel for who are your true friends. When they've offered you money and you know that, or help, and they have so little in return to gain, and you've seen this pattern of how they deal with people over the years, you begin to have a little more trust for these individuals. And certainly when someone is trying to manage huge amounts of your money, just be a little careful, spread out the risk. Don't put your whole life savings in one pot. That's just not wise. And it says, store up for yourselves treasures in heaven where neither thief steal or moth corrupt. And that's about all I could say. I mean, it's a battlefield out there, guys. You read 2 Corinthians 2:11, you'll see how quickly a church that Paul helped to plant and nurture went down the tubes, and they had false teachers there real quick. And that's just the pattern that God has established. Why? And I've cited this, Deuteronomy 13, verses 1 through 3, and it would be worth reading it. Why would God allow this situation to happen? This parallels even what happened in the Garden of Eden, guys. And people have asked, how do you explain the problem of evil? So much is explained by this verse right here. I don't know why Bible Gateway lets all of these clothing ads on here. Anyway, I guess that's how they're able to finance it. Anyway, if a prophet or a dreamer of dreams arises among you and gives you a sign or a wonder, and the sign or wonder that he tells you comes to pass, and if he says, let us go after other gods which you have not known, and let us serve them, you shall not listen to the words of that prophet or that dreamer of dreams. For the Lord your God is testing you to know whether you love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul. You look back to the Garden of Eden, God created this paradise. It was so perfect. And it didn't take long. God decided, hey, I'm going to let that snake in the garden. He's going to tempt Adam and Eve. You're going to be tested soon. I mean, if it happened to our first parents, and it's troubling that they failed, if it happened in Deuteronomy 13, as soon as they arrived in the promised land, God's going to let these false prophets in. And you look in the New Testament, God warned Paul, that church you built, hey, wolves are going to come in. And then it happened in Corinthians. This is a pattern that God starts testing his people real fast. He's trying to see where your loyalties lie. And, this is, and it says in Revelation 2, chapter 2, Jesus praised a church for testing people that claimed to be apostles, and they were found to be false apostles. Jesus expects diligence. So let me just share that verse, because this is it just seems like, are you test someone and they'll feel like, gee, are you insinuating I'm a liar? Someone who's sincere will welcome that test. You'd want to be a part of that church where they test people. It says not to lay your hands too quickly on someone. Forgive me, I don't know where that verse came. I may look it up. I know this may sound funny, but thank God for Google, because it makes it easier to look up verses. So let me just share this. Revelation 2, verse 2. I know thy works and thy labor and thy patience, and how that thou canst not bear them which are evil. And thou hast tried them which say they are apostles and not, and hast found them liars. Jesus is commending them for showing diligence. And all right, so there's a verse, do not be quick. And this is 1 Timothy 5:22. Do not be too quick in the laying of hands and thereby share in the sins of others. Do not be too quick in the laying on of hands and thereby share in the sins of others. You know, one way to teach the scriptures is to read the kind of the sordid history of the Christian church. Because as I've seen all these evil things happening in the church, I go back to the New Testament and I'm just like, oh my goodness, this is authentic. This is an authentic example for me that inspires me. This is the inspired word of God. It reassures me because it describes so clearly what human nature is like. And it has not the friendliest things to say about what goes on even in New Testament Christianity. I mean, if you think naively, as I did, that the New Testament church was like Acts, where it was just so beautiful and just wonderful, and people were selling all their property and fellowshipping, that was a rare moment. You get to the book of Revelation, and Jesus is reproving 5 out of the 7 churches. And it's a little bit sobering how Christianity is spread and what it was really like in the New Testament. You had pockets, you had seasons where it was really good, just like you had in the Old Testament. There were seasons, there were eras when you had good leaders and people had their hearts right, but it didn't take long for it to decay. And it didn't take long for God to start testing people, starting with the Garden of Eden and then, like what happened in Deuteronomy 13. It's going to happen, guys. And we can only pray that God keep us diligent, that we would be like the members of the Church of Philadelphia that didn't have a lot of power, or the Church of Smyrna that was destitute yet rich in God's eyes. I mean, if you think about the standards of the church you want to be, it's like, well, Philadelphia, we'd kind of like them to have a little more money, and Smyrna, but they were one of the most precious churches, because Jesus said to them, you've held fast my word. And then the church of Smyrna was under persecution and they were dirt poor. And it's like, I kind of like to have, nicer buildings and, kind of the trappings of just kind of a little bit more luxury. But no, that's not what Jesus valued. And I know that's a little bit hard pill to swallow, because I was raised in the USA and I was used to going to nice cathedrals, etc., and really nice worship services. But that's not, you look at the churches that Jesus valued, that wasn't what he praised them for. And Sparrow's here. So let me give my special greetings to Sparrow. Happy Thanksgiving. So that's just for you, Sparrow. Much love. Now I can't, I'm using Streamlabs here, not StreamYard. So I can't put your comment and just put it on the screen, like right across. But it is really, so I had to mix some scriptures in to what's going on, because it's really sad. And so, Sparrow, if you came late, I was talking about a 500 million, as in $500 million that were scammed from Christian churches. It was the Baptist Foundation of Arizona. So there is a Wikipedia article on this. Let me see if I can... So I first shared this Wikipedia article on the Baptist Foundation of Arizona that scammed $500,000. There it is. Oh, these guys were crooks. And thank God some of them went to jail. And so now I'm going to read about some of the, some other articles on this. Let me see if I could find it. One moment. Oh, here it is. Religious Pray, Baptist Foundation of Arizona. And this was August 1st, 2012. Okay. The Baptist Foundation of Arizona exhibit. The Baptist Foundation of Arizona is headquartered in Phoenix with offices in churches across the state. And here's the crook, the chief crook, Pastor Bill Krotz. The man at the helm of the Baptist Foundation was revered throughout the Arizona Baptist community for his financial wizardry. Actually, that was fake wizardry. He was a scam artist. After the foundation's collapse in November 1999, Krotz is indicted on charges of theft and fraud, among others. He's currently serving an 8-year prison sentence. Here's another one. These are the victims. Investors, Bill and Pat Anderson. Bill Anderson and his wife, Pat, invest nearly $200,000 in the Baptist Foundation of Arizona. When the foundation files for bankruptcy in November 1999, the Andersons lose it all. $200,000. I mean, this just makes me cry. I just want to tell people, be careful. You don't know what wolves are in the church. All sorts. I've seen it. I've not been the victim too badly. I mean, I've had some rough interactions, but I've never been outrightly scammed. But there's a lot the church, if I were running, this is why I don't want to be a pastor. Too many headaches. But if I wanted to run a Sunday school, I'd say we would need to learn the Bible in the New Testament that talks, Acts chapter 20, where it says Paul is saying, I prayed for you night and day for years because savage wolves will come upon you, not sparing the flock. This is the warning of the Garden of Eden. God's going to allow a snake in there. He's going to test you. Be ready. I mean, you would think that you're in paradise in the Garden of Eden. You met the girl of your dreams. You're king of the world. And you think everything's going to go well. And then God says, I'm going to let that snake in because I'm going to test to see whether you love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul, as it says in Deuteronomy 13. The same test happened to the children of Israel. The same test will happen in many churches. And you pray that God will give you the strength and discernment to see it. Because there's savage wolves out there. We'd like to think that there are people that are a lot better than that. But I got to tell you, in a church just full of sheep where people are trusting each other, which is a beautiful thing, you also have to be wise as serpents. And there's some snakes out there. And I got to tell you, I've seen these snakes. I've studied the cases. These guys look like the most trustworthy people on earth. You'd trust your mother with them. And that's a lot for me to say because I love my mom. It is freaking scary. I mean, they were smooth. They're unbelievably smooth. Okay, so in the modern day, we have Ravi Zacharias. Even me, when I heard his sermons, I said, what a great guy. What great content. Mom and I used to watch his sermons. And then we found out he was raping girls and he's using lots of ministry money as hush money or whatever, or to finance his activities. And it was hard to believe. So it was a cover-up that was both, about sex abuse and a financial scandal. And it brings tears to my eyes when I hear about pastors that have abused their own daughters. And the daughters, thank God, have survived and kept their faith. And they are there to tell the story about their wicked fathers who are pastors. JenniferGreenberg.net talks about this. Let me while I'm there, let me just refer anyone. She has. I'm looking it up right now. Okay. So if you need encouragement to remain in the Christian faith, people that have been through the ringer like this, it's like, okay, if they could still trust in their Lord and Savior Jesus Christ after being betrayed like this, it's like, yeah, they're holding on to something special in the Lord, that it wasn't built on someone else's manipulation. God did something special in their lives. So let me just put this in the side chat here. Jennifer Greenberg. And that's a beautiful, inspiring story. So now let me go back to the Baptist Foundation of Arizona. Bill Anderson. To stay afloat, Bill Anderson rejoins the workforce, working as a handyman while crafting and selling Uncle Sam lawn ornaments to pay bills. So the guy who lost $200,000 life savings, he goes back as a handyman. There's Bob Shaw. Bob Shaw invests nearly $250,000 in the Baptist Foundation, including money originally set aside for his daughter's college tuition. After BFA's collapse, Shaw is forced to sell his house and takes jobs like washing cars for extra cash. And gangster Go said Saldino Kent is back at court. I heard. I have a molecular biology show, by the way, with Cindy Lincoln tonight. We might mention this in passing on that show. That's going to be on the Evidence Reasons Academy, 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Central. We're going to talk molecular biology. Well, we might mention in passing Cindy's GoFundMe for her complaint against Kent. That'll be, I think, November 29th, which is real soon. December 12th is going to be another big day. We'll see if Kent goes to jail. So thank you for mentioning it. So I'm just going to continue on here for the Baptist Foundation of Arizona. The Baptist Foundation of Arizona's mantra, "Do good while doing good," compels more than 11,000 people nationwide to invest millions of dollars. Actually, it's more like hundreds of millions. Most investors are devout, elderly Arizonans. Kyle Tresh. In April 1996, BFA employee Kyle Tresh resigns after his bosses refused to acknowledge the foundation's fraudulent finances. The insider later becomes a lead witness in the state's case against his former colleagues. God bless you, Kyle. Christian conscience. Kyle Tresh, exhibit. Attorney Kyle Tresh signs on with the Baptist Foundation of Arizona in 1994, but resigns 17 months later after his bosses refused to publicly acknowledge the murky relationship between the BFA and its subsidiary ALO Incorporated. And there is an exhibit. That looks like that's an exhibit of a letter. The reporter. Following a tip from a confidential source, investigative reporter Terry Green Sterling spent 6 months poring through public documents. Her series of articles which suggest that the Baptist Foundation may be cooking the books and testifies an investigation by state's attorney general's office and puts investors on high alert. Wow. The devil? The devil. In a letter to board members, President Bill Krotz of the Baptist Foundation of Arizona compares reporter Terry Green Sterling to the devil, dated January 21st, 1998. The letter is written just months before Sterling publishes a series of scathing articles on the foundation. Oh my goodness! Doesn't this sound hauntingly familiar when good Christians come out and start questioning the conduct of church leaders, you suddenly get called the devil. And they start to foment their members to disparage you publicly and to say negative things about you. Oh yeah, isn't that what happens? The good guy starts to be demonized when he starts to get a whiff of someone's bad behavior. Yeah, I've seen this play out. Thank God for Terry Green Sterling. The devil was Reverend Krotz, Bill Krotz, not Terry Green Sterling. But this is how the game is played. Remember, these are savage wolves who will not spare the flock. Krotz responds to articles. In response to scathing articles published in the Phoenix New Times newspaper, Baptist Foundation of Arizona President Bill Krotz sends a letter to the foundation's investors calling the articles vague and full of innuendos. But then the audits. Year after year, Arthur Andersen audits Baptist Foundation of Arizona, giving the nonprofit its stamp of approval and clean bill of financial health. Yet in 2002, years after the BFA's 1999 financial collapse, Arthur Andersen agrees to pay out $217 million settlement to BFA investors. All right. Note to self: just because an auditor has audited the books and give a clean bill of health doesn't mean it's a clean bill of health. There are some basics. This is where it's good to have financially savvy people in a congregation that can smell a rat. And I don't know. I can't tell you what the answer is, what to look for. But I'm hearing horror stories. Let me see if I can find it. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. Didn't Paul warn you? There are going to be savage wolves that are come upon you. They're not going to spare the flock. So, let me see. Ministry. There is this ministry watch. Pastor. See if I could find it. He's a local. Oh boy. This is near where I live. I found out someone from my a former love, actually. I hadn't heard from her for 20 years, but word got back to me. She knew about this, and we parted on very friendly terms, by the way. We just kind of lost touch after she got married, and I was very happy for her. But strangest thing, she talks to a mutual friend of mine, and then this case comes to mind. And let me just show you what a wolf can do. Gosh, let me put this in the chat. Maybe I'll put it in the video description if I remember. Oh my goodness. Get a load of this. I mean, you think what you hear on the internet is bad? What happens in real life? Oh my goodness. Two Virginia church leaders buy $3.2 million Florida beach house. Charlie Whitlow, lead pastor of Community Church in Ashburn, Virginia, and business director Justin Holmberg purchased a $3.2 million beach house in Destin, Florida last May. The 5,705 square foot house, described as the ultimate beach retreat, has 8 bedrooms, 8.5 bathrooms, and all the hallmarks of modern luxury, including a watermark-built 60,000-gallon resort-style pool, and a swim-up bar and a pool in concrete, and an in-pool concrete picnic table. The 2 church leaders didn't purchase the house under their own names, but instead used the company, 89 Shira Street LLC, the address of the Florida home, to purchase the company. The company was incorporated in 2020 and registered to the church's address 19790 Ashburn Road, Ashburn, Virginia 20147. Rob Showers, an attorney for Whitlow and Holmberg, said using the church's address as the address for the LLC was a mistake and has since been corrected. Unfortunately, they incorrectly listed the church's address for the principal office and registered agent, which has since been changed, Showers wrote in an email. Showers also confirmed to Ministry Watch that no church funds were used, nor was the church involved in any way. Charlie Whitlow is one of the 4 pastor sons of Ardley Whitlow, who founded the Independent Community Church in 1982. By the time he died last year at age 79, the church had grown to more than 1,500 members and includes a private Christian school, Virginia Academy. According to Showers, the church has 6 or 7 elders. Charlie Whitlow has degrees from Liberty University, Regent University, and Fuller Seminary, and has spent much of his adult life working for the church's ministry. Before becoming lead pastor in 2010, he's chancellor of Virginia Academy. According to Showers, Holmberg works only 1 day a week for the church and his 200 other businesses he's run for years. Okay. We'll see where this plays out. I'm sorry for jumping the gun a little bit. We don't know. We don't know if there's any funny going on. Okay, so they're on watch, not yet guilty, but just a heads up. Okay, just a heads up. So now let's go back to the star, the man of the hour, Bill Krotz. Doesn't he look kind of suspicious? Though Bill Krotz, president of the Baptist, Bill Krotz, president of the Baptist Foundation of Arizona, ran an elaborate fraud that lost investors millions, the state believes pride, not greed, drove Krotz to corruption. And there's the lawyer who went to jail, Thomas Grabinski. Nice, wholesome looking guy, right? Not. Thomas Grabinski, in-house counsel for the Baptist Foundation of Arizona, receives a 6-year prison term after a jury finds him guilty on counts of fraud and illegally conducting an enterprise. But Grabinski and cohorts Bill Krotz evade a conviction on 23 counts of theft. So there they are. Reverend Krotz and his lawyer, Grabinski. A lawyer and a pastor. A lawyer and a pastor scamming people for $500 million. And they only get 6 and 8 years between the two of them. Anyway, Baptist Foundation of Arizona President William Krotz and his right-hand man Thomas Grabinski each received prison terms for their role in defrauding the foundation's nearly 11,000 investors of almost $600 million. Oh my goodness. All right, so, I prefer to cover the financial stuff. The stuff with physical abuse is a little too sensitive. It needs to be talked about. I'd almost prefer it be handled by others, because it's just kind of, I don't know, it's just a little too charged for me to talk about, especially on a family-friendly channel. I mean, we have to talk about it at some point, but you know, the physical abuse of church members seems to be just a little too vile to want to talk. I feel uncomfortable, but it does happen in the churches. Sad. Okay, so that was the CNBC article, which is an excellent article. There's another article that talks about the victims 20 years later. I think the CNBC article covered it well. I'm just leaving it in the video description, and that should cover most of it. So that's the Phoenix Journal. Let's see who the author was. Veronica Graff. Okay, so that wasn't Terry Sterling. Case. I'll just read a little bit. Case is still working at 85 because she can't afford to retire. In 1998, she and her husband Joseph invested more than $100,000 in a fund run by the Baptist Foundation of Arizona. Lured by its promise of 6% returns and the backing from a highly respected religious institution, they lost everything. It dampened my whole life in a way that we never recuperated from. Cases was among 11,000 investors who lost a combined $580 million when the Baptist Foundation of Arizona, or BFA, a registered non-profit, filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in 1999 in what prosecutors described as a Ponzi scheme. Today, it is considered one of the largest affinity frauds in U.S. history. Let me just read this. Open enrollment months for Medicare are her bread and butter for the year. From October to December, Case works 6, sometimes 7 days a week, taking house calls whenever they come. If she can, she reserves Sunday for resting and taking care of her 2 older sisters. God bless her. She did receive some restitution, but it was nowhere near the $100,000 she and her husband invested. That, she says, is one reason why she keeps working, and it keeps me out of trouble, she added. Just another sad... It's just sad. Okay. Anyone interested can read. I was just scrolling through that. So we've been going for about an hour, and that feels enough. I have to go outside and do some work on the house. Tonight I'm going to have a show on molecular biology on my other channel, the Evidence Reasons Academy. That's in the video description. And I want to thank you all for joining me to talk about some stuff. That's why I call it Black Friday. Thank you all for your love and support for what's going, for what I've been going through the last 2 years, and really what I've been going through is nothing. I mean, they're Christians who, I'm living a good life by comparison. I have really, I should feel ashamed that I complain about anything. God has richly blessed me and my family, and though the world is a dangerous and scary place, I've been in an oasis most of my life, and I just pray God will have mercy, continue to have mercy on my earthly life, and then I'll live a productive life for His kingdom. I'd like to wish you all a very, very happy Thanksgiving, and I'm going to close with a beautiful poem. I'm sorry for the blackout briefly. I'm going to close with a beautiful poem. It's called High Flight, and it has some beautiful music. So God bless you all, and have a wonderful Thanksgiving weekend.
I have slept the surly bonds of earth and danced the skies on laughter-silvered wings. Sunward I've climbed and joined the tumbling mirth of sun-split clouds and done 100 things you have not dreamed of. Wheeled and soared and swung high in the sunlit silence. Hovering there, I've chased the shouting wind along and flung my eager craft through footless halls of air. Up, up the long, delirious, burning blue, I've topped the windswept heights with easy grace, when never lark nor even eagle flew. And while with silent, lifting mind, I've trod the high, untrespassed sanctity of space, put out my hand and touched the face of God.